Thank you for staying with us right here on Morning Express. Today happens to be the 30th day of November 2015. It's a Monday and it's time for The Way It Is, where we take some of the things that have been happening politically in the country and say it as we see it, some of the effects that they may have and possibly what needs to be done. And let me go straight to introducing the panel this morning. To my extreme left, we have Senator Mombasa County and also the WIPA Secretary General. That's Hassan Omar. Thank you for coming, and I hope you had a good weekend.
Extraordinary weekend. We were in Lamu for the cultural festival. I think the energy was massive. The governor did an extraordinary job with his team, Governor Setimame. They say they recorded the highest level of attendance since the cultural festival was launched 15 years ago, which means a lot of faith. A lot of people from Nairobi, a lot of a couple of international tourists, a couple of international visitors. Endless list of dignitaries. Okay. I think it went very, very well. Congratulations to the governor from Lamu County, Setimame, and his team. So
you evidently had a busy weekend, and thank you for coming on the show.
In fact, when I was requested to leave today, I said I always have an obligation to KTN on Monday morning.
Thank you for that and for being consistent. Next week we have Martin Oloo, who is a lawyer but also a political analyst, and thank you for joining us also, Martin.
Thank you.
I hope you had a good weekend too.
I did. When you called me, I told you I was in the slopes of Mount Meru. I was somewhere in Mikinduri burying a father to a friend of mine. It was nice out there. But yeah.
And also sampling beautiful Kenya.
Absolutely. Yes. And I came back with some yams. So if you want some, please.
I shall follow you after the show.
About it, yeah.
Last but not least, we have Ambrose, Wenda, who is a lawyer, and thank you for joining us too. We missed you last week. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Last week, actually, I went to Mombasa on Sunday. Last Sunday, I was on intensive corporate governance training. For the whole week, I came back on Saturday. Then Sunday I was in charge. But the other week also, I'm happy to report that I was elected to serve as chairman of the board of management of Nyakach Girls High School. That is one of our biggest schools in Nyanza province.
Which one?
Nyakach Girls High School. And I'm very grateful to the community for thinking.
I know that.
Congratulations.
A school with a population of 1,700. That's not a small school.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. That's our panel this morning on The Way It Is. Remember, you two at home are part of the panel and you're welcome to participate. You can do that via Twitter, and the Twitter handles are going to be displayed on your screen. And this at KTN News. We've also got my Twitter handle. You can do that directly, and that's at Michael Gitonga. We'll also have the panelists' Twitter handles also displayed, and feel free to tweet them directly as well. Let me start off with just before the weekend, we had the Pope in Kenya, and he came and gave quite a number of things that need to be done in Kenya. And of course, as a religious leader and also as a head of state, gave us some direction. And let me start with you, Hassan, and just your take on some of the things that he had to say and maybe what we need to learn from his visit.
The truth is, the Pope exceeded my expectations.
He exceeded your expectations?
Absolutely. You know, there's this holding back by people who believe they're men of the cloth, the clergy. Their level of being non-partisan means you don't talk about politics, and you also don't talk about evil. but that's why I have had some severe anxiety about the clergy as they are currently, because if you remember the clergy of the yesteryears, Bishop Alexander Muge, Bishop Ndingi Mwananzeki, and those who are the transformative engines of this country, it was led by clergy. In fact, the Catholic Church, in its more positioning during the Cold War era, was actually a liberation church.
Right.
If you looked at it critically, Jane Cardinal Sen in Philippines, the Polish, liberation, and many other liberations across the world, and therefore, what the Pope has done is to reposition the Catholic Church with respect to the current discourses. The current discourses most of our nations are liberated. I don't think there are many colonies anymore, if at all. And if they are, and right now the current dispensation is about the inequalities in the world, being the defenders of the weak and the poor. compassionate for the poor. And I think, and then the current context of theft and corruption that is bedeviling literally most of our states. And doesn't only apply to African nations, but across the board. But for me, the Pope lately has become the leader of the social justice movement in the world. He undeniably has after John Paul II, who then came Mandela. They were together, the icons at that point in time, driving the pro-liberation agenda. Now the Pope himself has positioned himself as a poor, and for that matter, the social justice leader of the world. And he talked about the small things. And when he came here, look at his positioning. It was so deliberate. The Pope tried as much as practically possible to avoid the largesse of state. He came very humbly to State House because he's the head of the Vatican
It's just
City.
common courtesy.
Yeah, common courtesy. It's the state of Vatican.
Right.
And then, but after that, it was a full lot of itinerary of which recognized principally the people of Kenya, the youth and the poor, which is his critical subject. And I think for me, he scored very highly, very, very highly. He did not meet a government as government. He met it as government and as a matter of courtesy. Therefore, he also decided not to politicize his visit by having these little meetings with leaders who are privileged, be it Council of Governors. I saw that they were left out. He did not meet the MPs as a special group of people. In fact, I noticed that we like to be treated as a special group of people, my members of parliament, senators, who were collective together as members of parliament. He did not meet, and finally, he said no meeting the political opposition. His message was to the Kenyan people.
Clear.
And I think personally, I exceeded my expectations.
All right. Ambrose, whether your feeling of the Pope's visit and some of the things he had to say?
I think, first of all, as Pope's coming was God sent to this country, and also God sent to the Jubilee Coalition. He came at the right time.
Why do you say that?
He came when we were so low, and so low in the wrong things. The country was divided, the heat on corruption was very high, and negative ethnicity was multiplying on a daily basis. And he came to demonstrate to the world, he was able to demonstrate to the world that we are one people in this world. And what affects Mr. A affects Lady B. He also preached about corruption. Corruption is one of our major problems. I only wish he had what is called an altar call. Altar call, he now told people, you have had it, you seem to agree with it. Now those of you who want to come forward and confess and change from your corrupt ways, from your negative ethnic ways. He also demonstrated the humility of Jesus Christ. Actually, when you see him and some of our quasi-bishops, apostles, and all these titles, then you could see he showed them that you can be high and very humble, and you pass a message. If we were able just to take that as a country and unite in the new direction and continue in the direction he left us in, so that even those of us who are in Jubilee, we actually confess the spirit of corruption and negative ethnicity. We confess at the cross of Christ and say, today we have left it. The spirit of accumulation of excess money, stolen and hidden here and hidden there, so that we embrace the spirit of this country that is of growth, of inclusiveness, and of forward looking. I think Kenya would be very good.
All right. Martin Oloo, do you think it really makes a difference now that the pontiff came? I mean, is there anything new he said?
The pontiff may have not said much, but the way he carried himself and the way he presented himself spoke volumes. Number one, he spoke to the issue of servant leadership. I mean, he reminded everybody that you do not load it on your faithfuls if you are a leader of a faith. You do not load it on your people if you are a leader of a state. You do not load it on people if you are a member of parliament. Generally, he was speaking to the issue of servant leadership, and that came out very well. His modesty, his choice of ride, his choice of places he went to, Kangemi. You'll be surprised that even the three of the four men sitting in this, none of us has gone to Kangemi. None of us may be understanding what's going on in Kangemi. But, or indeed, even in our leadership, perhaps They have heard about Kagame, they don't know where it is, apart from maybe the member of parliament there. So basically what you're saying is that he chose to go to places where, as Kenyans, we don't think much of. And that was a very, very major statement that he was making. But then his message to the youth was something that went home directly. He said, look, there are many good things around, but not all of those sweet sugar things are great for you. Calling corruption sweet sugar, saying that, it destroys. You won't go with those riches or the wealth that you amass. You not necessarily go with it to the grave. Of course, appealing to our emotional side, appealing to our moral side. For a moment, I think Kenya was a better country to be in. We were all glued on our TVs. There was hope. There was good message. There was opportunity for repentance, as he says. Maybe the only thing that missed was to see Wenda going to kneel and saying that from today, when
the
I come
spirit of corruption is gone.
Michael, but one thing Martin has said, we need to flag.
Yes.
Pope talks about material greed without conscience.
Yeah.
Material greed.
Yeah.
It traumatizes me every day when I see the young people thinking that it is a shortcut to life. It's easy. A young man looks for you, oh, Senator, we have a proposal for you. We have a proposal for the Wiper Party. They bring you a 8 million, 20 million proposal. I'm asking them for what? There's this craze that people have created a perception in them.
But isn't it the leadership you included? And I'm not saying this to say that you have done anything wrong, but in terms of how can we change that script that has created that impression, because
that's now more of the spiritual, because I think that's where the church comes in, that's where the mosque comes in, that's where the clergy come in. We are the ones who show these symbols of materialism and make it appear like it's easy. You have to be contented with the little. You cannot have a leader who's stealing from a county day in, day out, then comes and gives you a handout and you think that's a great leader. And you're saying that in the next election, the leader is going to be able to be re-elected because he'll have money. Please, let us as a country have a conscience. I've seen this Wakili here. I'm not sure much about. Wakili is contented with little. I can tell you, that's one of my greatest respect for him, is that he's contented with little. That I know for a fact. Okay. And when we need to have contentment with the little that you have. Sorry, Martin.
Yes, my friend. What I was and I hear what he's saying, and I totally agree with it. Basically, what we need to all agree, as we sit here, is that the narrative of this country needs to be changed. And to change it, we must start with it. Pope will come for 2-3 days, he'll go back.
I mean, we had the President Barack Obama come in those
2-3 days, and
but we went back to where we were.
So what is it that we can do as a people to decide, and once and for all, that this is the wrong way and the right way is this? And when a leader like Senator speaks, I feel encouraged, because at the end of the day, the reason why governors are stealing, the reason why MCAs are stealing, the reason why members of parliament, including senators, are asking for more money is for this animal called politics, that where will you get money for campaign? Because our campaigns is anything but a showbiz, is anything but a show of might. It's about greed. It's about how much I have in order for me to convince people. We need to tell people that leadership is not about how much money I'm coming around and flashing. And for that reason, the youth who associate with us, the women who associate with us, have this lofty idea that once I am associated with Senator X or Governor Y, I am in for big money. So we can't then run a country by looting it, by simply, decimating it, and expect that the country will remain still.
Absolutely.
So we have the responsibility.
Yeah. I think looking outside is the problem. As we as a country, it's a question of looking inside and saying, as for me and myself and I will not do this, I will not do that, I will not involve myself in corruption. It doesn't matter whether people elect you or they don't elect you. There must be a time when you say, if this is what it costs to be elected, so be it. Because corruption is very real. Sitting as chairman of South Nyanza Sugar Company, if I chose to collect money, I'll be collecting about 10 million shillings a week. It is there and it is offered, and you ask, show us where to put it, and it will be there. And you tell them, that's not what I am for. My work as a lawyer is enough to feed me.
So what has made you different to a point where you refuse, because the others will take it?
Because of my identity. My identity in Christ, my identity as Wenda, and the stakes, what I stand to lose. You look at it, I look at, for instance, I've written books. Some of them talks about ethics, talks about, to my professional colleagues. Imagine I am in Kotwan on corruption. You will not read that book. And there are several books. Now there are 5. What about my colleagues? What about my colleagues here? What about my church members? What about my children? So you look at that and say, 10 million versus this. I think 10 million is far less. But the servant leadership we are talking about, some people think that servant leadership is about looking pale and going down there and pretending. Servant leadership is about identifying your own gift, okay? You package it nicely, okay? You develop it and serve it to the people. You serve something from you inside. Like the Pope came and served us. If you look at their leaders like Mandela, Mandela served courage and humility. That is what, that's the time when somebody like Raila also served courage. Serve this country, in this place you need courage. It is not serving tea. Like you steal tea there, then you serve people. Right. I'm a servant leader.
You need to capture that. I really liked your definition of servant leadership, because I know a lot of us politicians that you find, stuff like that. In fact, I keep telling people, Mombasa, get out of that mentality by the day. You can't tell me you've come and said, it comes as you, Kaki Barazan, you met as a Dumnas, you met as a draft Nasisi. Then the minute you retreat into your safe quarters, you start stealing from us. That's not servant leadership. You're right about that.
All right, like moving forward, and as we wind up on this and go to something else, what is it that you'd want to see changed now that the pontiff was here, Senator? What is it that you'd expect to change, especially from the leadership?
For me, I think if the Pope addressed one issue, we are the third most unequal society in the world, is to bridge the gap of inequality. I had been talking about this since I got into Parliament, and I tried even to bring a law, preservation of human dignity and enforcement of economic and social rights. Our constitutional doctrine is very revolutionary, particularly by talking about equity in a number of references across the Constitution. Talks about social justice, talks about marginalization, talks about the vulnerable. So it's a very revolutionary constitution. And therefore, if we only internalized all these elements and give it some kind of either legal or policy frameworks, then I think so that we can get to the heart of the matter and bridge the inequalities, so that we put human dignity or dignity to the lives of our people. I think that is, for me, what is a take-home from the Pope.
All right. Now, moving on to something else, and maybe let me come to you, Martin, and this is the cabinet reshuffle. First of all, let's start with the timing, the fact that it came in just before the Pope came in, and somehow it seems to have been swallowed in the expectation of the Pope. Do you think that was intentional?
Absolutely. I think it was a stroke of genius, because if you asked me, I would have advised that wait, let the Pope come and go, and then bring us our usual stuff. But to drop it hours before the Pope, pack it aside, we go on to higher things, and then when we come back, we can look at this issue soberly. Because what would have happened if we dropped it without the pontiff, we would be at it now, analyzing, say, why this one, no, not this one, and back to our usual self-destruction. So for me, it was good timing, and after parking it aside, anybody who still wanted to lobby, there was no time for lobbying or any other noises. So we went on with the higher things. The Pope was in town, and our spirits were raised. And right now, I think we have forgotten if we were hurt during the reshuffle or anything. We can live our lives.
We can live our lives. Yeah. Wenda, the cabinet reshuffle, the timing and also the...
I said the coming with the Pope was God sent. At the time of the cabinet reshuffle, remember 2 weeks ago when I was here, I said if I was President Oloo, I would actually dissolve cabinet. Those who have been just touched by corruption, I would leave all of them out and put in new people. That is the least Kenyans were expecting. Whether they were innocent or guilty, Kenyans had already made up their public mind. And so that happened. And then the cabinet reshuffle was done. In fact, there's a new cabinet formed. And then the Pope came. So it was the hour of atonement. It was like, yes, we atone the spirit of corruption. We abhor it and we reject it. And we have left it, we have left out people. Please now pray for us. And you saw the president say, pray for me as I fight corruption. So the genuineness, the way it was done, it was like we have confessed our sins, we are moving forward. And that appeased the people of Kenya. If we are able to go on like that, if we are able now to walk the talk, walk the walk, and talk the talk, so that the spirit of corruption dies and the new people who come in actually work hard so that they don't allow corruption in their ministries, and they also don't get involved in corruption. As we also work on negative ethnicity, the country will be much better and better. But if we relapse, luckily for CORD we have another 18, 20 months, but if we relapse, I see ourselves losing elections as Jubilee. So those who have been appointed, please take charge and work honestly for the people of Kenya.
Senator, your take on the cabinet reshuffle and, of course, the fact that Waiguru had just resigned. The opposition for a long time had been calling for those who are on suspension. Let it be clear, are they working or not? It's not clear.
There was a general view that the stalemate in the reshuffling of the cabinet was actually Waiguru. What has it in official corridors that President Kenyatta, Deputy President, wanted all those who had been cleared to be reinstated. President Kenyatta said if we did that, we'll play into the opposition hands. That this was just, theatrics as we had described it then. But then the stalemate was Waiguru. If you look at the script, it's very clear. Waiguru is told to step down on a Saturday because they had to issue a press conference on Monday. So the president issued this press conference surrounded with business and religious and other sectoral leaders on Monday. On Tuesday, he names his cabinet. This was all, I think, done also as a build-up to the Pope's visit, because there was a lot of discourse, particularly in the social media, that the Pope needs to pray for corruption in this country. So at least the president wanted to avert one of the issues. If he had named this cabinet after the Pope exit, particularly with the elaborate issues the Pope had spoken about, it would have looked like you even had to get pressure from the Pope to do it. So I think it fell into that script that had been then readjusted. I mean, was being rolled out. Because I wondered why on a Saturday I'm coming out from a graduation where I was officiating, and I hear Waiguru has stepped aside. So I said, why did she have to do it on a Saturday? She could have waited to Monday. Then you realize on Monday when they had the sectoral leaders, including business leaders, where Bob Collymore was presenting a bill, I don't know for what, that at that point in time, then that was where what was the real basis for that Saturday resignation. Then Tuesday, and then Wednesday you received the Pope. That's how I think it
okay,
fell into
script
place.
or no script, and whether
Now
it was
for me,
intended
for you,
that.
I'll be foolish to say that it was not good for him to have weeded out those who we've been all along saying have been bogged with allegations of corruptions. Some are just victims, I can tell you for a fact. Some are victims. Kazungu Kambi, I'm sorry to say, his corruption issue was a question of appointing a board member. So he fell victim in that whole choreography of things. Felix Koske had been cleared on all allegations. So had been Chirchir, who had been cleared of all allegations, to be honest. So we need to also sometimes preserve the integrity of those we vilify on public domain. So for at least those three, I think there is a certain moral cause that we need to also be honest about the fact that their issues had been cleared by the ESCC. The very accuser had said they had no allegations to continue to enforce or to pursue. So I think on that regard, but whether and I keep saying this, it's theory. I keep saying about this 4-year-old whose uncle, every day as he exited home, because 4-year-olds have what are called unbridled faith and trust, said, I'll bring you a sweet or a chocolate, and said, okay. The second time he did it, the fourth time he did it, the fifth time, the one day when the uncle told him, I'm going to get you a chocolate, because none came, the little 4-year-old said, you're lying. I think the Kenyan people right now at that point of saying, we want to see the truth,
From the perspective of the opposition, do you feel like now the president is finally headed in the right direction in terms of dealing, first of all, with corruption?
No, definitely we give a rebuttal to that on the basis that, you capacitate institutions that are charged with corruption, with fighting corruption. And we saw that the president did try to now nominate commissioners. So that is the right step. There are other issues like there is issues about the secretariat. There needs to be a critical rethink of the secretariat, because a lot of people believe that it is time that probably you overhaul also the secretariat. So you don't bring, is it new wine into old skin, or new skin into old wine, or whatever it is. So so that type of a situation, so that these 4 people, 5 also will only work. I have been a commissioner. based on the strength of its secretariat. When you work in commissions, secretariats are extremely powerful. Don't underestimate them.
Okay.
You are working with a commission of late, or consulting for a commission. You know what secretariats can and cannot do.
Yeah. But just on this one, I think that when all is said and done, corruption is not going to be eliminated because we have strong institutions or because we have made very strong policies or because we have very serious laws. It's a choice that we have to make as a people. Because it doesn't start from government. It starts from private sector. It starts from individuals. When I give a bribe, what am I expecting? I'm expecting to subvert a process. When I subvert that process, I'm involving civil servants and so on. Now, whether we make secretariat, and I think it should be made stronger, I think there are weaknesses there. It's a choice we make. And world over, we realize that corruption and indeed commissions haven't dealt with the issue of corruption. It's the resolve that our people make as a country and a leadership. Singapore, for example, the Asian countries, you make it impossible for you to survive through corruption. So that when you get involved, the actions are so severe that there's deterrence around it. So we will have to make a strong resolve as a people in order for us to deal with this. But yes, the movements, the changes are welcome. I mean, and you can see the pain in the leadership as they are saying, look, we want to deal with this monster. We're making these changes. We are telling you to be accountable. I mean, there's only so much you can do from a leadership perspective. If our people do not change, and this is where again the popes are coming and even the religious spirit becomes important. If as a people we do not have anything that we stand for, then we will always fall for anything. And that's why corruption will always harass us.
Okay. Yeah. Wenda, let's come back to the reshuffle and some of the appointments that were made. Now, when Barack Obama came, he spoke about the youth, meaning, of course, that is an area that we cannot ignore as a country.
Yes.
The Pope has also talked about the youth, and looking at the appointment, it looks like the youth have been ignored. Yet, the government had come in with a very strong front, that this is a youthful government. Remember, even them without, jackets and, very youthful government. But when we look at the appointments, are we reading from two scripts here?
No, I don't think the youth have been ignored unless this youth must be somebody from high school. The other day, you saw Mange Kunjuri coming in. My classmate Eugene Wamalwa is there. Most of the cabinet people in cabinet are fairly young people. And above all, youth here, if you ask me, I'll tell you that my brother, Senator Omar, is a youth. Not by virtue of age, but by virtue of thinking. He thinks young, he thinks modern, he thinks forward. Then you have people who may be very young, but they think yesteryears. You see them ingrained in old negative ethnicity, the Luos, the Kikuyus, the whatever. So somebody is 25, but when he talks or speaks, as they say, the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. You can see an old man, a very old man who was there during Jaramogi Kenyatta's time. And the heart is full of stories of what the Kikuyus did to the Luos, what the Luos did to the Kikuyus, what the Kambas did. You can see. But if in terms of age, the cabinets almost have young people. Some of them have a modern, growing mind. Some of them may have the minds of the late Jaramogi and Kenyatta incarnated in youth. So I think there's a balance.
There's a balance. Because do you agree that there's a balance, or do you feel like the youth have been ignored? Let me
talk. I think when it comes to youthfulness, most of these people are fairly new in terms of public appointments. Joe Musheru, the Eugenes, even this Dadan Kazungu addition. These are fairly new people in the domain of public service. And then some of them are even first-time politicians. So in that regard, one would say there is almost a mix. But then, look at it, the women have said it does not meet the threshold of gender, the 1/3 gender quota, and I totally agree with that, because I think I did the arithmetics. Though we have the most women cabinet secretaries or cabinet ministers in a long time, I think in independent Kenya, there's a threshold that is required of 1/3. But then another matrix which we do is very now archaic, very unsophisticated. Kimayo resigns, comes from some small village in Elgeyo Marakwet. It's like an entitlement. You go look for some guy called Boynet from his same village in Elgeyo Marakwet. You replace a Kikuyu for a Kikuyu, a Kamba for a Kamba. What is it called? A Luo for a Luo. No, not a Luo, but at least Kalenjin for a Kalenjin. A Giriyama for a Giriyama. And yet we know we've been talking about the ethnic balance in the cabinet. And if anything, an extra cabinet position was created. So it even tilted the balance even further. Because what happens, apart from a few pockets here and there, it is substantially from Rift Valley and central Kenya. And we have been talking about inclusivity, about building a framework. You know what is the logic here, Michael? Once you have given me the presidency, you have given me the lion's share of executive power. So there is nothing wrong to have just one or two people on account of competence from my region, or from my area, or from my clan, or from my tribe, whatever your arithmetics might be. But to continue to populate the cabinet just to try and, with the men and women from your ilk, it just shows a level of backwardness in terms of how we do our politics. I assume President Barack Obama, just to finish on this point, is African American. If you assume we lived in ethnic Kenya, that cabinet will have been having either colored or black people. But he realized you have already the lion's share of what you have. Give us something to also take home.
Martin, do you agree that...
I have a problem with that, because I want to say that once somebody has given a mandate to rule, he should put together the best team ever. And so you look for abilities, you look for confidence, you look for service delivery.
But given the environment that we work in and these perceptions, how does one do that, especially because you're trying to balance. Yeah. You're trying to balance the fact that you don't want to be perceived as tribal or regionalistic or whatever. At the same time, you're looking for somebody who can do the job.
Yes, now this is what I want us, this is what I want us to tackle. Either we sit back and decide we are tribal and try to fit everything in the tribe, or we say we're one country, and if I am capable, it doesn't matter where I'm coming from, put me there and we go on. Now, the problem we have is that we look at people and label them and label their tribe. We don't look at people and then look at their competence and then assess them for what they are. I mean, at the end of the day, there are expectations in terms of the different voting blocks. And those expectations, the pressure is there. So when you're from Rift Valley, you know that as a leader of Rift Valley, you're going to be assessed in terms of how you delivered. So the pressure for Ruto, for example, to bring in a few people from Rift Valley is high. Yes, he'll go out of that and then try and fish elsewhere. The pressure to the president to make sure that people are increased. For example, the inclusion of Mwangi Kinjuri. This is about pressure from Nanyuki, it's about pressure from the other, Nakuru and others saying, look, wait, but we are also part of this. How come we are not here? So those pressures are there and they are real. But what I want us to do is to forget about looking at, and in any case, we have 42 tribes. The cabinet is only 21. So even if you try to look for your tribe in that cabinet, you are not likely to find it there. Because at 21, certainly it cannot bring in all the tribes. We want to come to a point where we say, look, we are all Kenyans. I don't care. Michael, you may be called Michael Gitonga, but for all I care, you are a news anchor. So if you are doing a good job, I would rather assess
Judge me on the content of my character.
Not from where you come.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's a struggle.
Martin, you live. It's like you don't live in Kenya. Unfortunately, you live in a utopian. The Constitution itself demands regional and ethnic balance. The Constitution, because we live in a contextual reality. And if you're talking about competence, I can tell you, I can judge from your name, Martin Oloo, you might be Luo. There is not a single ethnic group in this country that does not have the competence that you're talking about. If you're looking for the competence of a person with Yale degrees and Harvard degrees, I can get you those people from even from my community, from even my family. So it's not. Let's not delude ourselves Senator, that there's a certain competence that other Kenyans elsewhere have. But I only agree with him to the extent. I agree with him.
Let me just stop you a little bit, because having said that, there is a process to have these people come on board. They will have to apply. You can't go fishing for them and say, okay, because we need somebody from the Pokot community and they have to have these degrees. Who from the Pokot community has these degrees and qualify, then put them there. There is a process.
There's no application for cabinet secretaries, but the truth is, I agree with him. In fact, he has said it the way it is. And that's why we call this program the way it is. He says, you see, Ruto and Uhuru have their ethnic pressures. So on account of that, then it answers its response to my point. But if you are a leader sometimes you need to tell your people that this is how we need to lead this nation out of this morass of ethnicity and this blind ethnic expectation. That's why there's cutthroat and ethnic rearrangement in politics for power. So if you want to decimate our political, this narrative, then you must also sometimes take lead from the front and say, listen, you have voted me president. I have already gotten the lion's share of executive power. I shall only give one or two of you in terms of taking into consideration the mosaic of the country. So I think we need to also be a bit realistic on that. So, but it's the constitutional demand of ethnic and regional balance in any institution, including executive.
Okay. Martin Oloo, do you agree?
Well, I have a challenge, and let's also admit that we have put ourselves in a tough place. There are many good things in the Constitution that are difficult to implement. When you say ethnic and regional balance, what does it actually mean? When you say the Luo bloc, when you put in Rachel Mamo, people will tell you that they don't recognize her as a Luo. Then that's another discussion. When you put in Eugene Wamalo, they'll tell you, oh, but you see, that's just part of Western. So this is a very difficult discussion to have.
Okay.
Unless I just admit.
Ambrose, Wenda, how do we overcome this? Having that balance of having people that qualify to give us the service that is required, and at the same time not to be viewed as a tribal thing, yet we are a tribal nation.
I think we grow by admitting where we fall short of glory of the Lord, where we go wrong. I think new Jubilee administration, if you're talking about the overpopulation of nations, then you would say that the Jubilee cabinet is dominated by the Kalenjin and the Kikuyu nation. And that was a mistake, in my view, that took place at the appointment, and is a cancer which is growing. But it's a culture that was picked from the Kibaki administration and the Moi administration. And
that's
that
no
is
excuse.
And the excuse here comes because of the voting pattern and the hunger for re-election. The Kikuyu says, we gave you the majority of the votes. The Kalenjin say, we gave you the majority of the votes. We deserve this. The Luos are also engineering with the Kambas on the other side. We will take over the leadership, and then we will give our people. So out of that engineering, you must appease your voters. So it will maybe require leaders who decide, I am coming into this position. I want to put certain things in place for this country. If it is good enough for them, I'll be re-elected. If it is bad, they'll vote me out, somebody else will come in. Until one day when we reach that leadership where your future, you live in the hands of God. You deal with the present and you do the right things. So that this country also moves away from negative tribal engineering, tribal voting, Luos voting for Luos. I see people, when you meet them in Mombasa, they ask you, how can you be with Uhuru? I say, but what do you mean? If Margaret Wanjiru is with Raila, it's okay. When Wenda is with Uhuru, it looks like I'm lost. I will not judge myself according to your standards. So until the people of Kenya start looking for qualities in leaders and stop voting on the basis of tribal engineering, so that when I'm elected, I go and appease my constituents who are Luos or Kikuyus, we will still have this. But I know that our current president is a modern president, and slowly we are coming out. That's why he put his foot down. Even if you are innocent, but you have been tainted, out. And I think even the current people, if they don't do well, I know some of them who are there, they need to sit on the edge of the seat. Because some of them, I know their appetite to make money is very high. I know some of them, if they ask me, we are friends, I'll tell them, when I meet them, I say, reduce that appetite. Otherwise, you'll be on the edge and out.
Okay. When people talk about this fact that not all of us can make it into cabinet, that's very true, I agree. But today, if Hassan Omar is a president, or somebody X, and that somebody X just demonstrates that there is only 2 people from his community in a cabinet of 30, no, 20, 22 is the maximum constitutional ceiling. Then and even if everybody else didn't find his way there, or their way there, then they will say, okay, there was fairness somewhat. Because we can say that, okay, we had one from this region, we had one from, it covers, you don't now have to go to the intricacies of Bukusu and Maragoli and Samias and that type of cutthroat. But when you are manifestly ethnic, then that's where you have these issues about where is our man. Then that it raises the embers of that line of interrogation. So I think Kenya needs a bold president. We don't need a president who a political dynamic that says, After all, we've been with corruption all along. I've had that narrative a lot with my Jubilee counterparts. We've been with corruption all along, but that's why you said you're new. That's why you said you're fresh. Or ethnicity is something here. And I can tell you for a fact, one of the reasons why you're seeing some cutthroat ethnic engineering at this moment in time, including this ICC as part of the broader ethnic engineering, is because once you've realized, Wenda has pointed out, 18 months to go to the election, less than 18 months, because by January, the parliament will be dissolved, probably May of 2017, less than 18 months to go to the next election. When you've realized we have done nothing, now what are we going to tell our people? We must continue now to identify the common enemy. It's Raila Odinga, it's ICC, it is this, it is that. So this is your government, this is where you belong. Don't worry about the interest rates, don't worry about the economy, don't worry about everything else. Just vote for us because we are protecting you as an ethnic group.
Okay. Martin, let's look at something else within the constitution of this new cabinet. And of course, we see the entrance of more politicians, whereas at the beginning, when Jubilee came into government, they had mentioned that they just want technocrats. They don't want politicians heading some of these cabinet secretary positions. What may have advised this new change? Is it a realization that you do actually need politicians in cabinet?
Definitely. My view is that you need a good mix of technocrats and political streetwise people. And so when you bring in the likes of Eugene Wamalwa, they give you a combination. They are professionals and they have been in elective politics. When you look for people like Najib Balala, for example, there's quality they bring you because they have the experience. Private sector, he's been in the local government, he's been in politics, and now in cabinet. So there is that understanding, and perhaps there is lessons learned as we go along, that you cannot be so removed or you cannot be unable to have a political savviness or a political nose and still run ministries. Our people still have that aspect. I mean, people expect to come with delegations to see the cabinet secretary. People expect to get their petitions and complaints received. Now, if you're approaching it from a political perspective, you'll understand why it's important that when people come, they need to be listened to, they need to be met at their points of need and so on. But when you're looking at it from a technical perspective, you tell them, no, you go and see so-and-so, go see so-and-so. So sometimes those issues don't go away. The complaints mount just because people are finding it difficult to access cabinet secretary as they were used to before. So you've got these boardrooms that would usually fill. You've got these people who think that they deserve to come and petition even when they could get their problem solved elsewhere. It's a culture we want to break from. It will take us a bit of time, but it's also a realization that Jubilee government must have come to that, look, you need a mix of skills. Political savviness. They say that they were the only two politicians in the cabinet. No, they have had to increase those numbers because you realize that these things matter. People need, you need people who understand what politics is about. And at the end of it, all this service delivery is about re-election.
Right.
So if you're thinking about re-election, then you're also thinking about how that can come about. So when you reconfigure your cabinet, you want to bring in different people, different players in order for you to achieve that. Having said that, I think that the downside of it is to go and pick an elected person, then make them a cabinet minister. The consequences are not, they're not good for the country in the sense that you are triggering off an expenditure and an unnecessary heat that we are going to be occupied with in the senatorial seat in Kericho. Kericho? Yeah, Kericho. And then you have Malindi. So what we're doing is that we are increasing our temperatures. We are rehearsing for 2017 unnecessarily, so at the expense of service delivery. So that, to me, is the downside.
That's the downside of it.
Yeah.
Wenda, your take on having politicians now coming into the cabinet, is that a good move by Jubilee?
If you ask me the theory about technocrats going to cabinet, technocrats from permanent secretary going down,
That's where they
technocrats.
should.
Cabinet secretary, president, first and foremost, is about politics. It's about policy, relating to the people, and relating to what you want to implement. It is now no longer about specifics. These specifics, the permanent secretary, and there are several experts in each ministry. I saw a situation where the president went to Uganda, negotiated a deal with the counterpart, based on COMESA protocol, based on the East African protocol, about sugar and a host of other activities. He went with some cabinet secretaries. When they came back and saw a little heat in the country, they went under the table. Now the president was left exposed, looking like he went there to negotiate for Brookside, all these things. None of them. And that time, it was about politics. It was now not about being a technocrat, an expert in sugar or milk or Brookside. It's about politics. They went under the table. So part of the heat that the administration has received is that the so-called technocrats, nearly all of them, when things were hot, they all went under the table. The president needed a few people. That's why sometimes, to explain, the people leaders who know the language of the people, who can go and tell the people, it is not this, it is this, these are the facts. Now, when you hear about the technocrats, the way they are, they go under the table, they keep quiet, and they watch. If the president is going down, they say, me, I'll go back to World Bank. So that, I think, is the realization. We are realizing a bit late. And when you talk about technocrats, what do they have that Senator Omar here doesn't have? Is it because you run for elections, you're a technocrat? So going forward, look at America. The biggest seat is that of foreign secretary. Who normally takes it? A politician who knows how to relate politics, the language of the people, and talk with the technocrats. Okay. You go there and put some professor. We see, I'm sorry to say, we had our Professor Kaimenyi, very polished professor, very able, very good. He was put to run in a ministry where you have to talk the language of the people, the language of Sosion. He couldn't. They would insult each other, and if they met the teacher, they would stone each other. So, and I hope my brother Matiang'i will make it. If he doesn't pick the language of the teachers, he'll go the same way. He'll be in trouble.
All right, coming to you, Senator, is the opposition being weakened, looking that some of the appointments are also now fishing again from the opposition? It's not the first time we have Nkaiseri who was got into...
Nkaiseri, and this is, you don't need to, I don't need to qualify this, but you had Nkaiseri going to Jubilee as a cabinet secretary. In fact, it's God sent because he's done everything wrong. there's everything wrong in arresting journalists, doing all kinds of wrong things. Yeah, so he gives us even a narrative for the elections. So what happens is, in fact, I can tell you, and that's why I said I don't need to qualify this. Maasais today are farther away from Jubilee than they have been since the elections in 2013. I can tell you for a fact, I want to congratulate my brother Dan Kazungu at a personal level, but politically, it adds nothing new, extraordinary within the coast region for the Jubilee coalition. And it is a first time, as they put it, and I think that's even that also speaks to his gravity. Not only a first time, many people probably got to know of him when he got appointed as Dan Kazungu Cabinet Secretary, because there is a certain gravity. I know Mungaro had positioned himself for that position. Maybe I would have said maybe now they're complicating the political rearrangement, because Mungaro is a more aggressive politician and more assertive. He's more streetwise than he's than probably Dan. So I think that whole arrangement, in fact, for me, what you have done is to release into political space politicians who are extremely bitter. Kambi is a bitter politician now, and you will feel him. Mama Charity Ngilu is a good politician, not a bitter politician. You will feel her. It's not been a joke. So you've released people merely on account of allegations in the most colorless manner. So it will also, in fact, I think for me, part of what has happened is it has rebuilt the code, it's consolidated code in certain areas. And now we need to just focus on a few more areas, because now I believe Mama Ngilu will be with us. We will support her for many causes that, and already she was working very closely with Kalonzo on the since some predicament. And I know what will happen now when it comes to the coast region. I think it will add very little value.
Okay. In the interest of time, I know we could still continue with this cabinet secretary reshuffle, and there's still a lot to tackle. But also there was the ASP that took place in the Netherlands. And coming to you, Martin, there's a lot of confusion as to whether Kenya really got what they wanted, or we were shortchanged, or was it what? Can you, in simple terms, what happened?
You see, Kenya went into this meeting with an idea that Article 68 on the issue of recanted evidence should not apply in the case of the
Ruto and
Ruto
San.
and San. And they wanted two things about it: suspend it, and okay, they wanted it suspended, and of course, or not allow it to be used retroactively. Now, by the way, one of them was already in there anyway. The minutes of the previous meeting in 2013 already had the issue
Of
that
Rule
actually it
68.
will not be, it will not be used retroactively. So that was not a new issue. The new issue was suspend it. But the other one was appoint an independent panel to investigate the office of the OTP. Now, that didn't happen. And neither did the suspension happen because the Assembly did not give that, but allowed further discussions at the bureau level. But even at the bureau level, a resolution was not given. What happened was some language was agreed, which language just affirmed the minutes of the previous meeting. So basically, the issues are still going to be canvassed in court and not necessarily outside court. But as to whether Kenya pushed a diplomatic position, yes. As to whether that was strategic, that is something that one can look at. When you are in a place like Kenya, you can choose not to do anything or choose to make so much and say, look, if it's risky, then so be it. But what's the better thing? I think it was good to put in a fight, but the fight increasingly began to look isolated. We thought that most African countries would be with us, but as we were coming in closer, we realized that we had fewer
They all
and fewer.
remained silent when it came to that.
Only Uganda spoke with us on this one.
Yes, only Uganda.
Yeah, but I think as the position is out there. Is there anything new and major? Perhaps not. Is the case before the appeal court going to be decided on the merits of it? Certainly. And one can hope that those guys are going to exercise their own independence and they'll come up with a decision.
Okay.
It could as well be in favor or...
Wenda, closing comments as
I
we
think it
summarize?
was the key thing, the major issue on Rule 68 was that it was applied retrospectively. Yet it had been early agreed.
It should not be.
It should not. So the commotion and the negotiation was that it should be made clearer that it should not
be
apply retroactively.
Right.
Now that was achieved. And I would congratulate the Kenyan team that they moved from Kurosei Forest to the right forum. And the right forum, I keep on saying, is engaging those institutions at the international level.
Okay.
There. But I have read the decision that included the recanted evidence. Actually, the way we interpreted Rule 68 is not the way they interpreted it in that rule. And then it is a rule. They relied on article, I think, 69, which somehow allows something like that. And the court went on the basis that they are being proactive, they are not being retroactive.
Okay.
So I think still I would advise the Ruto team, let the legal team sharpen and be prepared.
All right.
But
I think we'll have to wind it up.
I agree with Martin. They achieved nothing in the strictest sense of the word. I think that what you're telling is trying to take some kind of a diplomatic or moral victory. That did
Senator,
not happen.
we'll have to wind
So
it up
finally,
right there.
I think
Sorry
it was
about
a zero-sum game.
Thank you very much. That's the way it is. Senator Hassan Omar, also the Wiper Party Secretary General, Martin Oloo, who is a political analyst, also a lawyer, and Ambrose, Wenda, a lawyer. Thank you very much for being part of our panel this morning and telling us the way it is. And for those of you at home, let me just read a few comments. And there's Brian Mas, who says, Senator is very right about ethnic inclusivity. There's also Paul MM, who says that Weda could be clean and Hassan extends an olive branch but appears to speak for the corrupt. We don't have time to defend that. We also have Benjin Dolo, who says that today the panel is on point, Sana. And thank you very much for your participation. I can't read all your tweets, but thank you very much for participating. Well, this is where we're going to wind up Morning Express this morning. Thank you for joining us, but do stay with us right here at 8 o'clock. We've got News Hour coming up.